My strawberry cake hit me in the face at exactly 7:41 p.m., thrown by my own daughter-in-law in a room full of candles, friends, and a violinist pausing mid-stroke like he'd seen a ghost. 10 minutes later, my son told his wife, calm as a judge, that if she ever humiliated me again, he would file for divorce. At 6:02 the next morning, he repeated it in the stillness of a yoga studio while her forehead rested on a rubber mat and my phone buzzed with his text, "We're here." By noon that same day, she was at my kitchen table with every credit card she owned fanned out like a losing hand, buttercream still crusted under my fingernails, asking me to help her save their future. If this sounds dramatic, wait until you hear about the leased car she couldn't afford, the limited edition, shoes that cost more than a week's groceries, and the investment that almost didn't happen because of a pastry. I am 63, and I bake to keep my hands honest. When grief or frustration threatens to flood my throat, I cream butter and sugar until the mixture turns the color of forgiveness and double the vanilla because I've learned that some things, love, patience, flavor, should not be rationed. People say my strawberry cake is famous. I say it's practical. The flour, eggs, a few tricks, and the understanding that tenderness in a crumb comes from restraint. Most problems are like that. You don't beat them to death. You coax them until the air inside has somewhere to rest. My son, Evan, has my stubborn jaw and his father's quiet. He married Tara, a woman with a runway walk and a budget that behaved like confetti in a windstorm. Tara believes in moments. She curates them. She hunts hotels with infinity pools and rents cars that require valet introductions. She believes her life should shimmer, that the best proof of living is the kind of photograph that looks expensive even on a cheap screen. I love beauty. I love a dress that falls like a secret and a table set with silver that remembers your reflection. But I love the future more. The future has bought me peace in tiny installments, packed lunches, repaired hems, a quiet emergency fund called I Will Not Panic. Because of the future, I can sleep without calculating numbers on the ceiling. This is not a lecture. This is a story about cake, ruin, and renovation. You should know the months that led to that disaster-glazed moment. I tried subtlety. I tucked a folded article into Evan's jacket about emergency funds. I left a book about investing on the coffee table the way some people leave art books, meant to be glanced at and absorbed by osmosis. I offered to show Tara a simple spreadsheet that wouldn't make her feel trapped, just guided. "That's sweet," she said, when I first suggested we talk about money. Sweet like a child's drawing on a grown woman's fridge. Her lipstick matched her shoes, and her smile matched neither of us. "What's sweeter," I said, "is walking past a sale with the power to keep walking." Evan listened. He always does. Not obediently, thoughtfully. He asked me about a modest position in a broad index fund. He asked me about an energy storage company I'd been tracking, the one I liked because it made me feel as though someone had finally decided to store lightning in a jar and sell it wholesale. "Mom," he said, "after the honeymoon balance, I might put a little in." "Start tiny and automatic," I told him. "Money is shy. It grows best in the dark, without applause." Tara liked applause. Her phone lit up with it. Likes, comments, fire emojis whenever she posted matching lattes and monumental sunrises from places she did not own. She believed the month was a stage, and the bill a curtain that never quite fell. When they planned their first wedding anniversary, she booked a restaurant where the lights pretended to be candlelight even when they weren't, and the dessert list came with adjectives. Evan asked me to bring my strawberry cake for a single photo of the two of us, mother and son. "Her tower will be the show," he said, "but your cake is us." I woke that day before the sun, same as I do when I need the kitchen quiet to steer my mood. I beat the butter until it sighed. I sifted flour twice because I like to watch snow fall where there is no winter. I folded in sour cream for tenderness, added a lemon's bright zest to remind everything inside the oven that life will remain interesting, and baked the layers until they bounced back like polite conversation. While they cooled, I sliced 23 strawberries because prime numbers comfort me. They're indivisible, stubborn, faithful to themselves. I brushed the finished crown with warm jam, so the berries would shine, even in the dark. The restaurant looked like the inside of a wish. Evan in navy. Tara in a sleek white sheath that whispered when she walked. A violinist who understood how to make a room listen. The pastry tower rose like ambition on the center table. My cake waited off to the side, my little miracle beside a guest book that begged for ink as proof we'd been there. Dinner was an art installation of food. Broth poured from tiny beakers. A salad lifted by tweezers. Everyone praised the pastry tower the way you praise a skyscraper, as spectacle. During a lull, Evan leaned in and asked about the shares again. Keep it small. Keep it boring, I said, and told him to automate what he could and avoid anything that created an adrenaline surge. If you feel a thrill, I said, that's not investing. That's a roller coaster. Tara returned from the ladies' room and caught my last sentence like a snared earring. She lowered herself into her chair, eyes bright and brittle. Are we doing the money talk? She asked. At our anniversary? Evan asked, I said. Evan knows I planned this night for us to celebrate what we have, she said. Not whittle it down into charts. I'm just saying, I offered, that you can have both, joy now and joy later. But joy later won't schedule itself. She went very still, the stillness specific to people who are about to move quickly. Do you know what I see when I look at you? She asked finally. A museum plaque. Information precise. Important, maybe. But I'm not allowed to touch. Then she stood. She crossed the room to the side table where my cake rested. She lifted it, as if it were not heavy. She walked toward me, as if through warm water. And she threw. This is what I remember. The cool slap, the sweetness of berries, the whole room inhaling and holding their breath like they were trying on grief. The violinist's bow hovered. A single strawberry slid down my cheek and landed in my water glass like a shipwrecked sailor finding harbor. I didn't gasp. I didn't speak. I wiped my eyes with a cloth napkin that smelled faintly of starch and somebody else's iron. My first thought, absurdly, was that the buttercream could have been a shade sturdier if I'd kept beating 20 seconds more. Evan stood so fast his chair scolded the floor. Enough, he said. Tara, enough. She shames us, Tara said, but the last word fractured. Us. The way ice breaks underfoot. She turns my life into a lesson. She's my mother, he replied, and in that moment I saw the boy who had given his last slice of pizza to the new kid at school because kindness is a reflex, not a strategy. He asked the staff for a minute, and they vanished like trained birds. Friends who were delighted to be invited to a tragedy were disappointed when privacy took the stage. If you ever humiliate my mother like that again, he said softly, I will file for divorce. Over a cake? She whispered, stunned and suddenly small. Over a cake? Over contempt, he said. Over a habit of turning advice into insults and love into an obstacle. You must leap in heels. She looked at me as if I might rescue her from the things she had made. I could have piled words on her, a frosting of reprimand that would crust and crack and teach her nothing. Instead, I placed the napkin on the table and sat up straight. I love you, I said. I hate your debt, and I hate that it has made you its spokesperson. They drove me home in a silence that felt like snow. Evan at the wheel with his grip at 10, and 2 like a man clinging to a principle. Tara a statue, perfume too sweet in the close air. At a red light, he said the line that mattered. Tomorrow. Yoga. 6 a.m. I'm coming. You hate yoga, she muttered. I hate what we become when my mother is right, and we are afraid to admit it. I showered that night and watched pink water lace down the drain. I brewed peppermint tea. My phone pinged at 5:42 a.m. with a photo of a glass door fogged from within. We're here. At 7:13, another. We talked. Later, he told me what happened. The studio smelled like lemon and rubber and possibility. The instructor spoke in a tone that made people obey without feeling bossed. During Child's Pose, when the room hummed with quiet, he whispered, I meant what I said. In Downward Dog, Tara's back looked like a resolve. I know, she whispered to the mat. I'm sorry. He asked for the cake, and she said, for treating your mother like a stand-in for every warning I've tried to outrun. Then let's stop running, he said, and when class ended, They stood barefoot at the edge of their lives and promised the kind of small things that fix big ones. By noon, she stood in my doorway. No makeup.
Ponytail.
Daisies from the grocery store. Honest flowers that don't pretend to be anything else. "I'm sorry," she said. "And I'm frightened. Please help me." We sat at my kitchen table, a battlefield in many acts. Homework, taxes, early morning prayers. She took a paper bag from her purse and emptied it. Cards glittered under the light like fish scales. I fetched a notebook, drew 3 columns, must, need, want, and slid the pen to her. "This will feel like a diet if you pretend you're starving," I said. "But it's a training plan. We're strengthening the muscle that holds your future." We called numbers. We explained. We asked. We listened. It is strange how much you can accomplish with a gentle tone and a willingness to hear a stranger sigh in relief on the other end of a phone. We consolidated one balance, negotiated a lower rate on another, arranged a hardship plan on a third. We cut 2 cards in half and sprinkled the pieces between different trash bags like confetti at a practical wedding. We built an account named Weather. $50 a week went there without announcement. If there was more went. If there was less, we didn't skip. We sent $5 and clapped for it. Money is like a nervous cat. Scaring it makes it run under the bed. The hardest decision was the car. That elegant silver whale with a payment that 8 hours of work without chewing. We listed it. We sold it. She slid into a used sedan with a stubborn air conditioner and cried. First because letting go looked like failure. Then because the relief was a physical sensation she could measure in breaths. "I feel like I've been holding my shoulders up by my ears for a year," she said. "I look at you and Evan, and it's as if you live at ground level. I've been balancing on a stool in stilettos." "Come down," I said. "The view is better when your feet remember the floor." We canceled subscriptions that nibbled at their lives. A streaming platform they hadn't used since a documentary about urban farming, a monthly curated box of creams they didn't need, a membership to a gym that existed mostly as an aspirational line on a bank statement. We kept 2 luxuries deliberately chosen, a small weekly bouquet from the farmer's market, daisies, again, and a monthly date night budget that covered real food in a casual place and left room for a slice of pie. On week 3, while we were entering transactions into the spreadsheet, she said, "I hate that I need training wheels." "Everyone does," I said. "Some of us just present them as cute baskets and say they're part of the vibe." I taught her what the bank doesn't. That money wants to be told where to go and becomes resentful when it spends all day figuring out where it accidentally went. We made envelopes, digital and paper, with names that felt like invitations instead of punishments. Rent, groceries, weather, gifts, joy. The last one mattered. Joy kept the rest of them honest. She had a gift with fabric and fit. I told her she could turn that into a grace that paid back debt with dignity. She began altering dresses for women who wanted to love their closets again. She charged fairly. She delivered on time. She learned to send an invoice and sit in the power of watching a payment arrive because her skill had turned a problem into relief. There were setbacks. She bought a pair of shoes on an impulse and brought them home, then walked them back to the store 30 minutes later. She cried angrily in the car and called me from the parking lot. I felt like I might stop being me if I returned them. "You are not those shoes," I said. "You are the woman who returned them. That woman is sturdy." We decided that Evan's investments would remain simple and wide, a set amount into a broad market index, automatic on the 15th. Nothing that demanded a heartbeat spike. With a side income, they created what we called sourdough, a small, experimental jar for long-shot fun risk, only after the necessities were funded and the debt payments were made. Sourdough could buy a share of a promising company or a piece of a community project that built play structures. The rule was that loss would not bruise the household. It was 2 months after the cake incident when the real test arrived. One of Tara's old friends, Jenna, all lashes and laughter, messaged her with front-row passes to a private launch at a boutique where the hangers are weightier than some people's budgets. "You'll die when you see the collection," Jenna wrote. "You can't show up in last season." I saw the tremor in Tara's hand when she read it. I want to go, she said. And I want to not want to buy anything. Then go, I said. Practice is where muscle is built. She went with a $30 cap in cash and left her cards at home, which was courageous in a way that doesn't sound like courage until you have done it. The boutique smelled like money pretending to be vanilla. There were glasses of something pale and celebratory. There was a photographer. There were the dresses, bias cuts and invisible zippers and labels that understood how to write a price like a dare. When Tara said no to the first dress, silk the color of peaches, Jenna laughed. You look incredible, she said. You have to get it. We only live once. Exactly why I'm not going to live it in debt, Tara answered, and the woman at the register glanced up because that sentence is less common than it ought to be. Jenna rolled her eyes, and because she needed an audience, she said loud enough for someone to hear, ever since she started playing accountant for her husband's mom, she's been insufferable. If I were your accountant, Tara said calmly, I would charge you for that attitude. The photographer snapped a picture right then, and later that photo, women with expensive light on their hair and Tara with her head thrown back in laughter genuine as a bakery loaf, sat on the boutique's social feed with a caption friends plus fashion plus fun. No one could see the signature she wrote later at our kitchen table when she paid the next card down $200 more than the minimum and labeled the line woman revised. When we set the first investment into that energy storage company, we used sourdough money only, earned from hemmed gowns and altered jackets, and we put the transaction in the ledger in green ink. Not because the stock would make us rich in a Hollywood way, but because that ink meant this was done with intention. And months later, when Evan showed me a graph rising the way a child grows out of sneakers, I nodded and said, do not get excited. Get consistent. The apology tour matters in the story. People think apologies travel in one direction, from the wrongdoer to the wronged. But apologies are a circle if you're brave. Tara wrote notes to the restaurant staff and paid the cleaning bill for the ruined tablecloth. She delivered strawberries to the violinist with a card that said, thank you for pausing while we learned. She booked a time with a photographer who had put his camera down when my cake flew and bought his most candid shot of Evan holding my elbows gently, strawberries smeared like war paint, not because it was pretty, but because it was true. We framed it in a simple wood frame. When Tara came over a week later, she stood in front of that photo and exhaled like forgiveness requires oxygen. The next strange thing was the class. I don't teach high school anymore, but knowledge itches if you don't let it out. Our neighborhood community center has a multipurpose room with a floor that remembers every Zumba class. I asked if I could use it one Saturday morning. I typed a simple flyer. Money Calm, a free hour on budgets that don't hurt. I taped it to coffee shop cork boards and waited the way a person waits for rain in a dry month. 10 people came. 12 the next week. 16 after that. Young, old, married, alone, a nurse with 3 kids, a man who said, my father never taught me anything about a bank except fear, a woman who had shopping bags in the trunk for 2 days so her fiancé wouldn't see them. I told them what I told Tara, no shame. Shame is expensive. We wrote must need want across the whiteboard. We practiced phone calls to customer service reps by using a script that began, I respect your time and have a simple question. We wrote the words weather and joy and watched people relearn how to breathe. Tara came, always in the second row. The first row is for overachievers or people who need the closeness. The second is for converts, taking notes in a neat hand that used to sign for packages without reading what was inside. Once, after class, she stood beside a display of knitted baby hats someone had donated to the center and said, I wish I could unthrow that cake. You can't, I said. But you can bake 3 times for a baby shower and stack those acts like bricks. We built milestones. At $500 in weather, we clinked glasses with iced tea. At the first credit card balance under 4 digits, we had dessert at a diner with a cracked vinyl booth. At $2, 500 in retirement contributions, Evan bought a plant for the living room that required attention, but not anxiety. Tara named it Prime because the leaves grew in numbers that made me laugh. There is always a tester storm. Ours came the night the refrigerator made a noise like a dying animal and then refused to chill milk. Before weather, That would have been a panic purchase charged at midnight. Instead, Evan opened his laptop and Tara opened a folder with the name, Household, UGG, and they combined the $289 in weather with a discount code and a floor model. They carried the fridge into their home with help from a neighbor named Luis, who knows how to lift and when to chuckle. Tara texted me a photo of a cold carton of eggs and wrote, "This is our champagne. Value spreads." The neighbor who helped with the fridge asked about the community class. He came the following Saturday. He brought his sister the week after. She brought her teenager the week after that. I watched people's shoulders lower by degrees that mathematicians might love. When the second wedding anniversary arrived, they didn't rent a fantasy. They invited friends to their own home with a dented patio chair and a grill that ticked when it was ready. Evan grilled chicken. Friends brought salads in honest bowls. Someone set a portable speaker on the windowsill and played songs that didn't require a tuxedo to enjoy. I took my cake carrier out of my bag, then stopped. Tara touched my hand. "May I open it?" she asked, the way you ask to hold a newborn who can't yet hold its head. I nodded. She lifted the lid and found the manila envelope tied with a green ribbon. In it were numbers that sang quietly, whether at /$1, $9.50. Retirement contributions humming. The first investments small, steady growth. A letter in her handwriting that didn't tremble. She wrote about fear disguised as glamour, about the heat of the yoga studio and the cold of a credit card statement. She wrote, "I cannot unsling a cake across a room. I can sling payments across a debt and watch it shrink." She wrote, "I would like to be the kind of woman who puts the cake in the middle of the table, not the kind who weaponizes it." We ate grilled chicken and laughed. When it was time for dessert, Tara carried out a strawberry cake of her own baking. The buttercream didn't slump. The berries shone. She had brushed the crown with jam, because gloss is not always a lie. Before we cut it, she took my hand. "I owe you laundry," she said. "I ruined your dress." "You owe me nothing," I answered. "You've given me proof." "What proof?" "That forgiveness is a kind of savings account. You put a little in every day, and one day you can draw on it without going broke." This is the part of the story that satisfies the people who like neatness. Months passed, and their numbers continued their patient climb. Tara tailor-made a wedding dress for a bride who cried because the sleeves finally fit, which is a holy thing. Evan took on a small project at work that increased his salary enough to put their retirement contribution at a round number that felt like an oath. They bought a used crib and an Allen wrench and built a future that didn't wobble. But life is not a single arc. It is a yard of curves. Out of nowhere, or rather, because nothing arrives out of nowhere, Jenna posted a video. It was glossy and pointed. "Beware toxic in-laws who sabotage your joy," she said to the camera. Behind her, I recognized the boutique's wallpaper. Some mothers pretend it's about money, when they really want control. She described a friend whose mother-in-law threw a fit at an anniversary dinner and made her cry. She mimed a cake flying and ducked, giggling. The comments multiplied like rabbits. Someone who knows me sent the video to Evan. He watched it with Tara. He looked at her and said, "Ignore it." "No," Tara said. We answer with something she cannot argue with." She opened her phone and recorded a short, clean video at their kitchen table, the one where numbers had become prayers. No tears, no accusations. She simply said, "1 year ago, I threw a cake at my mother-in-law because she was right about my spending and I didn't want to be wrong. I apologized. She forgave me. We built a plan. My life is calmer now. If someone tells you to avoid people who care about your future, ask who benefits from your chaos." She posted it. She turned off comments. She set the phone down and went to baste chicken like an ordinary person because sometimes the right ending is a small action done well. The boutique girl made 3 more videos. They fizzled. Clamor exhausts itself when it can't find a fight. We held another community class and I added a section called Public Money about the cost of living in the spotlight of other people's opinions. We talked about performative buying and the dignity of privacy. We passed around envelopes and the room filled with the sound of paper moving toward purpose. When Tara and Evan told me they were expecting, they did it with a plain ultrasound picture in a plain frame. We sat on their couch and cried. Not because babies fix things, never because of that, but because we had built a room where a cry would not echo as panic. On a rainy Tuesday in her second trimester, Tara arrived at my house with an apron looped over her outfit. "I need to practice," she said. "We're going to a potluck at church, and I want to bring something that doesn't taste like an apology disguised as food." We baked. She measured flour like a scientist and leveled it with the straight edge of a butter knife. She creamed until the mixture turned light. She kept beating beyond where she normally stopped. "This is when you say, 'Let patience do a little more,' isn't it?" she said, smiling. "The cake knows," I said. "So does a budget. So does a marriage." We poured the batter. We sliced the strawberries. She asked about how I managed those first years after Evan's father died, when bills and grief kept hobbling each other. I told her the truth, that there were nights I thought about selling the kitchen table for firewood and mornings when I built humor out of bread and peanut butter. That the calendar can be a weapon, that I used it like armor. That nothing replaced the person I'd lost, but I learned to respect the life he'd left me to defend. "Numbers saved me," I said. "And cake saved my evenings." Our cake came out golden like a story trying to end well. We cooled it, and she brushed the top with jam. She told me she had emailed the restaurant where I'd been hit and asked when their staff appreciation day was. She was going to deliver 3 strawberry cakes on her own, along with a thank you note for the grace they showed a woman wearing humiliation like a sticky shawl. "I want that room to smell like sweetness for good reason," she said, and I had to turn away from the oven because tears climb faster when you're not watching them. If you're waiting for me to say that everything stayed orderly forever, forgive me. We had human days. Evan forgot a due date and paid a late fee that made him swear under his breath. Tara bought a blazer on impulse for a hypothetical promotion she wasn't yet up for and returned it with a receipt crumpled like a confession. The baby was born with a cry like a declaration and lungs that solved problems by shouting at them. Sleep became a rumor. They ordered takeout more than planned. They missed one community class in a row, and then another. This is what I told them. Rest is a category. Put it in the budget. Call it health. Fund it like it was a bill from the universe. They did. They survived. On the baby's first birthday, the party was not a staged event with balloon walls. It was a backyard with ants that thought they lived there first. We made sandwiches that ignored trends. There were bubbles. I brought a strawberry cake, of course. Tara carried it with both hands like a bridge. She set it down in the center of the table and said, to me and to the circle of friends who had become family, 1 year before this baby was born, I threw this cake at his grandmother. Today I present it to her, and to him, as a promise. I will not buy our joy with credit. I will build it with choices. She sliced the cake with reverence. She placed the first piece on a plate and handed it to me. "Thank you," she said. "For the weather, the joy, the sourdough, the second row, the lemon zest, the silence you held when I deserved noise." I took a bite. The crumb was tender. The frosting held. The strawberries sang, in their small way. I looked at my son, now a father holding a child who thought frosting was an entire food group, and I felt the strange, quiet satisfaction of a story that did not require revenge to be cruel. This is the revenge I believe in, building a life so steady that the people who doubted you have nothing left to throw. After the guests left and we were cleaning, because real parties end with rinsed plates, Tara laughed and said, "Do you remember the violinist at the restaurant?" How could I forget? "I ran into him at the farmer's market last week," she said. "He asked how we were. I told him the truth. He said, the pause was worth it." "Yes," I said. "The pause saves lives." We washed the last dish. We put cake in small containers labeled with names. We sat on the back steps in the dusk, listening to a neighborhood that has learned to sleep. Evan's phone buzzed with a deposit notification, the daily drip that makes wealth look boring and therefore possible. The baby hiccuped in his sleep. A breeze lifted the edge of a paper plate and set it back down. Tara leaned her head on my shoulder, and for a second we were two women who had done a very hard thing, and the proof of it tasted like strawberries. I keep a little notebook by my bed, the kind they sell near the gum at the supermarket. I write things down because brains are busy places, and mine is a thrift store of memory. That night I wrote, "A thrown cake is a headline. A paid bill is a plot twist. Budgeting is not punishment. It's choreography. When you know the steps, you stop stomping on toes." The most romantic sentence I've ever heard. Automatic transfer scheduled. Yoga studios at dawn are confessionals with better lighting. Teach what you learn. Then watch it multiply like yeast. When I turned off the light, the house creaked the way houses do when they've settled into honesty. I listened to it and smiled. My son did not divorce his wife. His wife did not mistake austerity for love's price tag. And my cake? It didn't mind what had happened. Flour and sugar are patient. They know they'll have another chance to be measured right. Months later, at the community center, a new woman came to class with a face that said, "I'm trying." She wore a blouse with a tiny strawberry print, and when we took a break, she said, "I heard about you from the Boutique Girls video. I wanted to see the villain." She laughed then, embarrassed. "You're not a villain. I am someone's cautionary tale," I said. "And someone else's grandmother." She told me she had 3 cards and a leased car and a habit of celebrating Tuesdays as if they were awards for survival. "Are you going to ruin my fun?" she asked, covering insecurity with bravado. "No," I said. "I'm going to move it to where it belongs." We sat down with must, need, want. We wrote weather and joy on a clean page. She cried, and then she smiled, and then she wrote the words, "I will not buy my future with interest." After class, I walked home carrying a carton of strawberries from a farmer with dirt-hard hands and a laugh like tin. I put them on the counter and reached for my mixing bowl. The kitchen is my voting booth. Every cake a ballot cast for sweetness within our means. When the baby, now a toddler with an angle toward trouble, comes to my house, he toddles to the fridge, opens it, and claps at the light. He thinks electricity is applause. I teach him to clap for eggs, for butter, for the way sugar dissolves if you ask it nicely. I will teach him compound interest when he is 7, the same way I taught his father, by lining up pennies and moving them, week after week, until his eyes light because he sees what patience can do. I will teach him to sign cards with legible letters and to apologize out loud, not in whispers. One day, when he is old enough to ask about the photo in the simple frame, the one where his grandmother looks like a berry-smashed warrior, he will point and say, "What's that?" And I will say, "That's the night your mother and I started telling the truth." He will ask, "Was it scary?" "Yes," I will say. "The best stories are." And if he asks for cake, I will slice it thin because good things are better when they last, and hand him a fork with a handle that has known small hands and teach him to eat over his plate because messes are inevitable, but we can contain them with practice. If you've come this far with me, you might be waiting for a final moral that fits on a tea towel. I will not give you one. I will give you a grocery list because that's how lives change. Flour, strength. Sugar, grace. Eggs, structure. Butter, kindness. Strawberries, joy. Vanilla, memory. Lemon, edge. Patience, always more than you think. A notebook for numbers and confessions. A phone with minutes to call and ask for better terms. Scissors for cutting cards and tags off the life you no longer owe. Names of people you can tell the truth to. At the anniversary that followed all this, year 3, they asked the violinist from the restaurant to play in their backyard. He showed up in a plain shirt and jeans, and when he tuned his instrument, he said, "I remember the pause." "We built a life in that pause," Tara told him. And he nodded and lifted his bow, and music stepped into the space like a guest who knows you well enough to knock once and come in. We ate pasta and a salad that didn't need a description. Neighbors wandered over with paper plates. Someone's dog stole a piece of sausage and fled. Children shouted. The violin wove through it all like thread. When it was time for dessert, there were 2 cakes, hers and mine. We set them side by side, frosting twins. She took the knife. I put my hand over hers. For a second we held it together, both of us looking down at the neat circle of sweetness and the way the strawberries shone. We made the first cut as if we were christening a boat. And maybe we were. a sturdy one, headed into ordinary waters, leaving behind the wreck where something once broke and, miraculously, taught us how to swim.
So, another story of my grandmother has end, and be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.